clearly, particularly a Shemai today. Well, we'll be checking on our guest today to see if she remembers what that means. So yeah, welcome back to the latest episode of the Be Better podcast. Thank you, as always, to our regular listeners. If you're a new listener, if you've tuned in specifically to listen to Liz today, hello. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Liz, for telling people to come listen to our podcast. Who have I got with me today? I've got Liz Southey. Liz, how's it going?
Good, thanks, Tim. Yeah, great to see you. Great to catch up. Looking forward to the podcast.
It's been a while. So so for full transparency, Liz and I first met possibly sometime in around about 1996 in probably some dodgy student bar in Cardiff when we were at university together. So Shemai is Welsh for hello. Do you even vaguely remember learning that at Cardiff over 3 years? Oh.
I no, I remember a few words, Diolch and
Diolch.
Sanjivar, and yes.
That's good enough. That's good enough. So yeah, I've actually been sort of reconnecting to my Welsh roots, courtesy of good old Duolingo. So I've been trying to learn some Welsh I'm actually on I think I'm on 470 days streak. So I'm actually doing all right. But don't ask me to say too much in Welsh. I still rely on like Sglodion Lloegr Arafnawr, which means sausages, something slow down. Yeah, so yeah, you can just read road signs and say you're bilingual. So yeah, listen, I've had a good 20 minutes of preamble chat before we start the podcast. And yeah, most of those were stories about how awesome we were in 1996 to 1999. And those stories will remain on the preamble to this podcast. If you want to get access to those, then you can pay extra to listen to those. But yeah, it's been good to catch up. We caught up a few times this last year also. So, but yeah, Liz, tell us a bit more about who you are and what you're up to these days.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So I'm Liz Southey. I'm co-founder and director of scientific services at the Salve Health. But as you say, my journey into what I'm doing now, which is medical communications, started back at Cardiff when I did pharmacology at university. And I knew I loved science, but I didn't like doing it. I liked reading and writing about it. I went and did a master's in science communication, and I basically fell into the world of medical communications back in the very early 2000s. I didn't really know what it was when I got my first job as a trainee medical writer, but but hey, that's what university prepared you for, right? And yeah, I started work at an agency based in just outside Oxford in the UK, and quickly learnt what it was and learnt that I love it. And basically back then, medical communications was sort of an outsourced function of pharmaceutical companies who wanted to disseminate data to doctors and other healthcare professionals in a non-promotional way. So we largely worked on the with medical affairs departments. So that is not promotional, it's not commercial, it's not marketing. It's like the objective dissemination of data, essentially called medical education, but it is provided by pharma companies to doctors. Yeah, and I stayed in working at the agency back then for a really long time, about 18 years.
Wow.
And yeah, it grew, it changed, it became part of a larger group, and it was an amazing experience, and I loved living in the Oxfordshire area and traveling the world, because it did afford a lot of travel opportunities, which was great. Yeah, and then I moved to another agency, and one of my colleagues who I met in the very first agency, she and I had always talked about setting up our own company, and got to the point where we were both experienced enough to feel like we could do it, but also felt like if we don't do it now, we never will. We made that decision, or we talked about making that decision, just before COVID hit.
Nice.
So decided not to do it at that point because a lot was happening in the world. But yeah, then decided that, do you know what? There's never going to be a right time. And given the way the world of work changed during COVID, it actually helped us
Mm.
tremendously because people were set up far more to work remotely and work from home. And that's what we wanted to do, was have like a networked remote virtual agency model. So yeah, we took the leap, and then officially set up the Salve in April 2022. So I'm here talking about it.
Nice. So relatively new little entity.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, when's a good time to start a business? Yeah, there's never a good time. Although I would suggest delaying a COVID pandemic was smart. Yeah, when I started this business, my wife had just gone back to work. Well, I say she's gone back to work. She'd started a business with a business partner. They hadn't taken any money out of the business. We had like a 2 and a bit-year-old child. We just got a mortgage, and then my dad got diagnosed with cancer in the UK, and I'm living in New Zealand. So yeah, that was a pretty shit time to start a business, all things considered. But hey, we're here now 8 years later, so we're doing all right. Yeah, I think anyone who's pondering the leap, I think because you. So how old were your kids when you made the leap?
Yeah, so when I decided to leave my job at the agency, it was 2020. So Hannah would be 6 and Harry was 3. So
Nice.
yeah,
Not sort
also
of like,
juggling that.
yeah, but also sort of, they're just kind of at the younger ones sort of at the point where you're kind of self-managing maybe enough that you don't need me around all the time. And maybe
Yeah,
working for myself, I've definitely found, the flexibility of working for myself. Well, actually, I can drop you at school, and I can come to assembly, and I can do that. Whereas when you work, particularly in the bigger machines, when you got to that sort of bigger company size, like, yeah, Liz, actually, this is the 5th day you've had off this month, to go and see your kids. So yeah, it's the
yeah.
self-employment path is not an easy one, but there's plenty of upside.
Absolutely, and that was one of the drivers as well for us setting up our agency, was that we wanted that flexibility for ourselves, but to also offer that to anybody who wants to come and work with us, because it is really hard. And there are plenty of times when you do need to leave early or come in
Mm,
late, or and we didn't want to be tied to an office-based situation necessarily. So
mm.
yeah, it's huge upsides from that perspective.
So the communication work that you do, is it stuff that the public would see, or is it still just stuff for doctors?
So we do, there's definitely patient aspects and elements to it as well. So definitely, um, depending on the project, communicating to patients. You can't do that in a sort of a commercial capacity or marketing capacity in the UK. Although, funny enough, New Zealand and the US
Yeah.
are the two places in the world where you can advertise directly to
Mm.
patients. But what we do isn't advertising. So yeah, there is definitely patient communication aspects. When we're communicating to doctors, it tends to be, well, it can be through a variety of channels. So publications, which are obviously publicly available, so anybody can read those. At scientific congresses, medical congresses, they tend to be only attended by doctors, but
Yep.
obviously, again, that's open to the general public as well. So it's yeah, it's pretty transparent. I mean, there are times when it is going to be, some of the internal things that we do are going to be in a closed environment, but
Yep.
yeah, plenty that's open.
Nice. Yeah, New Zealand is a funny place for that. Yeah, it's like literally us in America, the only two places that you can. And because I guess obviously I spent a good amount of years in the medical device industry, and
Mm,
it is
mm,
interesting, yeah, seeing the yeah, the influence. And my wife used to be a pharmaceutical rep, so yeah, she's been part of that. How did you find working in that industry? Have you been watching like the painkillers on Netflix, and the because obviously, like, the pharmaceutical world over the last couple of years, possibly not getting into the politics of lockdowns and COVID, and there's
mm,
clearly a whole
mm.
lot of stuff that's being unbundled. But yeah, what's that been like for you? Because looking back
Yeah,
on the medical device world, there was clearly a bunch of stuff that was going on that you kind of like, so cool. And maybe, the evidence that you were telling me about that product wasn't actually so true. So yeah, have you come across any stuff like that as well?
Well, I mean, I would say that working on the medical affairs side, that's where it is very objective, and it's high, especially in the UK, it's highly regulated. So interesting you mentioned like the painkiller, the opioid epidemic, and the Sackler
Yeah.
um yeah, scandal, is that when I watched that on TV and they were they were showing essentially bits of what I am involved with.
Mm,
I was like, oh my God, this would absolutely never happen now. This, like
mm,
the way the data were presented, the regulatory requirements around how data are talked about. It's just it couldn't happen now, not in my viewpoint.
mm.
And seeing what they were doing back then, and it isn't that long ago, but it was,
Yeah.
it was still a while ago. I remember saying to my husband, "It's like, oh my God, this would never get through
Mm,
compliance," So um, a lot of what I see is and do is highly regulated, and
mm,
especially in the UK, the ABPI are really, hot in terms of how data are presented and
mm.
communicated. And yeah, in medical affairs, it's often around like disease awareness. It's not product specific, it's
Right.
above brand. So I think probably on our side and what we do, we're not privy to that. If
Yeah.
that goes on, we're not privy to that.
Yeah. Which is, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah, and good for us. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Um, I had a question. I had a supplementary question there, but I have lost my train of thought on that one. No, it's gone. Oh damn! I thought it was quite a good question too.
Well, I can talk about, because of course with B Corp, which we can talk
Yeah,
about
yeah,
as well, but we are considered working with a controversial industry.
yeah. That's
So we have full disclosure on the
yeah,
B Corp website, and
yeah.
with our sort of entry and everything. So and we feel comfortable that we don't feel like we're going against our B Corp values by working with a controversial industry, and
Mm,
it's there's many benefits to pharmaceutical company as
mm.
well.
There's yeah. So for people who maybe are new to B Corp or sort of just be curious, there's certain industries that cannot be a B Corp. Although I did hear, is it Sanofi has recently certified as a B Corp, and
Uh, Chiesi, I know for sure.
right.
Chiesi is an Italian pharmaceutical company that is a certified B Corp.
Because yeah,
I'm not sure
there
about
was
Sanofi.
let me I
Yeah.
might quickly fact check that whilst we're on the but yeah, there was a pharmaceutical company. There's a couple of pharmaceutical companies that have become yeah, Sanofi is now a B Corp. And so yeah, it's interesting because theoretically B Lab, which is the organization that runs the certification framework, they have a list of industries that they've kind of said, look, these industries are existentially risky enough, or there's been historical, I guess, lack of transparency or lawsuits in this industry sector that would mean that there's too much risk in us certifying them because there's stuff that we don't know. And so extractive industries, casinos, and pharmaceuticals have been on that list. But yes, Sanofi, as far as I'm aware, pharmaceuticals are still on that list. So I might have to go and do some research as to how they've done that. But yeah, if you are a B Corp or a company going through the B Corp journey, you have to flag if you have clients involved in those controversial industries. So it is, yeah, it's pretty rigorous in that, yeah, you can't go, well, we're just working for the client. It's yeah, so that's a process you have to go through.
Mm.
Um, yeah. And what was that? What's the yeah? Sort of back at the track a little bit. So the idea of sort of business as a force for good. Was that something that you were feeling in the big companies that you're working for, or was it just kind of like, look, I'm paid money, I do my job, and I enjoy my job, but maybe lacking purpose in this role? Yeah, what was that kind of journey like to sort of recognition of the idea of business as a force for good?
Yeah, I mean, so at the start, I was just happy to get a job, and
Clearly, yeah,
you
and
know,
they didn't see through your lack of knowledge.
exactly. And I hope my original boss doesn't doesn't listen to this podcast. Um, so and I just just loved it. And then I guess, I would say medcoms as an industry is good from a sort of raising disease awareness,
Mm,
charitable activities and donations for sure. But I think where Elena and myself found, like we wanted to add more was the fact that it's great doing a bake sale, or it's great wearing a certain color on a certain day to raise
mm,
awareness or whatever. But actually, we've got a lot of experience doing what we do. We could actually put that to even better use by doing, working in the not-for-profit sector as well as with our pharma clients, and starting um, thinking about setting up the Salve. We wondered how we could work that in and make that part, a real core part
mm.
of what we do. And that sort of started the idea and led us to B Corp. And that's where, when we saw, and we'd seen B Corp on Patagonia, Innocent Smoothies, Jamie Oliver, that kind of thing in the
Mm.
UK. So very much in the retail sort of space. And we were like, well, surely we can do it for a service provision industry as well, and looked into it. And when we did, and we saw this, the impact assessment, we were like, this is an amazing framework with which to start a business. So I think we feel very lucky that we did it right at the start. So we haven't, it was a lot of work, but it was an amazing framework to set up a business that we knew would be rigorous, but also have that business for good aspect running throughout the whole business, not just the thought about, oh, let's do some not for profit work, So that just really gave us that impetus at the start of our journey of setting up the business with that in mind. And it was great.
Nice. Yeah, it's a fairly common question that we're posed by smaller startup companies. Oh, we're too early, or we haven't been trading long enough yet, because you guys you did B Corp pending, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. So
Yeah,
we were able, because we had literally just set up, it meant
yeah,
that we were able to go through the B impact assessment. And because I think it's within 12 months of
yeah,
like your incorporation or your first client, or
yeah,
it means that you can state that you are B Corp pending. So that was great because it really kept us accountable. By putting that on our materials, that was we felt like we was really setting our intention out right from
yeah.
the start. And so that meant that we did it from the start as well, which I think was, yeah, super helpful.
Yeah, it's someone did tell me once, but I can't recall the full story, because B Corp pending is not available in this region. So Australia, New
Ah,
Zealand,
okay. Yeah.
we can't have it. So, but in the US and UK and possibly the rest of Europe, yeah. So to become a B Corp, you have to have been trading for at least 12 months. If you haven't been trading for 12 months in the US, UK, and I think Europe, you can have this B Corp pending designation, which basically says we've done the assessment, we're just waiting to to reach our 12-month point. And I think that's really good to hear that. Yeah, it kind of like, well, we said we're going to do it now, so we kind of
Yeah.
have to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, a lot of startups, exactly as you've articulated, it's a really useful tool to kind of go, well, okay, we don't have any employees yet, but we might have in, say, 18 months time. So how would we treat our employees if we had any? Well, let's map that out now, so that we're not scrabbling when we do have that, and just, yeah, building some policies and procedures from the ground up, because there's, probably the majority of companies that we help with their B Corp are legacy established companies
Mm.
who suddenly have
Mm.
to go, right, we have to retro engineer a whole bunch of policies and processes, and now we have to implicate wider teams, and that's good, because transformation and change is, it's all part of the journey of becoming a
Mm.
purpose-driven
Mm.
business, but it's a hell of a lot easier to bake it in from day one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it made us think about stuff we'd never would have considered, different, like you say, like different policies, and actually making that into something concrete. It was like, well, that's great. We've thought about it now. Of course, it will need to adapt and change as we grow and evolve, but
Mm.
we wouldn't have thought about it even at that point. Um, and yeah, I also had something else to say, and I can't remember. Oh, I was going to say the fact is that it was, myself and Elena. It also meant that it took us, half an hour to make a decision, or
Yeah,
whatever it might be, because we didn't have to ratify it with other senior management or with the teams or whatever. We said, right, this is what we want to do. That looks good. We'll write a policy. Job done. So it was a lot of time to do all of that, but at the same time, it made it a lot easier because there was only two of us making the decision.
yeah, totally. And yeah, it makes job for me so much easier when there's just one or two people in a room. And you go, right, do you want to do that? And they can just go, yeah, as opposed to, okay, right, yeah, we need to take it to the leadership team, and then we have to get board approval, and then we need to do four
Mm.
drafts of this policy. Yeah, it's tough when you're in that environment. Yeah. So no, go you. Um, and so yeah, any was there anything particular in B Corp that you were kind of like, you sort of mentioned there's a few things like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. Was there anything in particular that you really felt called to, like, actually, yeah, we should definitely do that? Or yeah, any other sort of shocks or surprises?
Yeah, so because we operate as a remote agency, we felt, well, our carbon footprint is not going to be a lot. We
Mm,
don't have overheads, we don't have an office, we're not thinking about people commuting, that kind of thing. But actually, there's still a lot you have to consider, and we hadn't necessarily considered like the impacts of our supply chain from a
mm,
carbon perspective, and I can talk about that. We're not there yet. That's one of our improvement things, but it actually brings me on to another thing that we hadn't necessarily considered was our supply chain. So we have lots of suppliers providing different um, services, and the fact, myself and Elena, we're co-owners of the business. We're a women-owned enterprise. So again, we wanted to make sure that our supply chain was also diverse, had plenty of women-owned businesses, that kind of thing. And it was
mm.
only until B Corp the assessment prompted us to think about our supply chain. It's like, oh yeah, so we need to think about who we are getting to do the work for us and what impact they have. And
Mm.
so that was definitely one that was a light bulb moment for us, in terms of like thinking about who we work with, to help us do our work. And yeah, and then also thinking about actually those people also have, a footprint as well. So
Yeah,
sort of folding that in, and that's definitely one journey that we're still going on. And I think that's the thing with B Corp, isn't it? You don't, just because you do the assessment or get certified, it doesn't stop. It's like continual thinking about, right, what's the next step to get better and better, really.
totally. Which is why we call our program to help people do B Corp be better. It's like, use
Yeah.
B Corp to be a better business, but recognize that you possibly will never get perfection, because
Oh, yeah.
it's a moving feast of, well, what's material to you today, what's changing, what's being solved, what actually, oh, hang on, there's new research, actually that's not as big as issue as we thought it was. So don't stress so much
Mm.
about trying to take on that. um yeah, the supply chain one, that is every every company that we've had with B Corp, that is the one area. And even the product based companies. So we typically find for service based companies it's tough, because you've got probably a bunch of software subscriptions with big multinational companies that, sure, you can possibly send a survey, supply chain survey, and supplier sort of code of agreement, code of conduct, to their info@facebook.com. Sure. Good luck. But I mean, having
Yeah.
having said that, I do keep saying to people, if every B Corp in the world sent Google a supply chain code of conduct and a survey to say, hey, can you confirm that you meet, you meet these certain criteria, eventually there's going to be someone in the company who goes, hey, could we just create a one pager that we can send back to these people, because it's really annoying the shit out of me.
Yeah,
So
that's a
that's
great
that's
idea.
that's my theory. If
Spam
every
them with,
if
yeah.
all, we're almost at 8,000 B Corps. If all 8,000 sent an email to the same email address at Google on the same day to say, I'd like to know what your policies and procedures are around, social environment performance. It wouldn't take them that long. I would imagine, they could just Google it, surely. um, um, yeah, the supply chain, it's the conundrum for everyone.
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
that's going to be interesting to see how people solve that. And sometimes there's no good choices. There's limited pool of supply chain, and so yeah, it's about that journey. Have those conversations, let people know, hey, look, this stuff is important to us now, so we'd like
Mm,
it to be important to
mm.
you too. So can we have a conversation around that? And I think in general, most people are happy to have that conversation and keep those relationships. And I think also for me, it's part of the power of B Corp is being able to have those conversations with suppliers, which creates better supply chain relationships, because they see the value that you're putting on them, and wanting to work with them to be a better organization. So yeah.
Yeah, and actually, that's true. We've seen it with some of our suppliers that by having that conversation, it's made them realize, and they've asked what B Corp is because we're saying this is part of our B Corp, requirement, and they're like, "Oh, what's B Corp? Oh, okay." And I know one of our suppliers, I'm not putting it purely down to us,
Mm,
but has said actually we're now going to go along the B Corp route. And we're like, great, So I've had conversations with them about B Corp, nothing to do with the supply, delivery that
mm,
they give to us. So it's I think it goes, like you say, it goes beyond. It actually spreads that awareness as well
mm.
when you start asking questions of your suppliers.
Yeah, it's like the tail wagging the dog. If you're the company in the middle, you've got all these relationships, yeah, that you've got with companies that you can exert that influence. And I was talking, I've done quite a few podcasts this week, so I'm confusing and conflating who I've said what to. But yeah, the ripple of impact that you can have. There's a
Mm.
conversation that you can have, and 3 years later, that conversation will lead to a change, and you'll just never know that you might have been that last piece of the puzzle that led that person
Yeah,
over that 3 years to actually commit to doing it. And so, yeah, just having more of those conversations, and just there's so much overwhelming proof that B Corp helps businesses perform better across all the metrics that, you know, the example I always use is, we're all trying to have the best party on the street. Although I think we had some pretty good parties in Cardiff. So, we're having
yeah.
the best party on the street that other businesses look at and go, okay, look what Liz and Elena's doing. That's pretty cool. How can we be more like them? Oh, they're a B Corp. Oh, okay. Maybe we should look at it. So yeah, there's so much of that ripple effect that goes on.
Absolutely. And it's not like we want to have the best party. We want to have the party that everybody joins
Exactly that.
and has their own parties, right? So it's not
Yeah.
it's not like a
It's not,
competition thing. It's
yeah,
like
it's not an
this is
exclusive party that
no,
only people can come to. It's like, yeah, totally. Like we're having a pretty good
yeah,
party, but yeah, if you want to have a better one, let us know. We'll come to your
yeah.
one.
We'll
Yeah.
come to yours, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Bring the chips. So yeah, so sort of the arc of purpose and impact, has young Liz growing up, were you donating to charity? Were you out picking up litter on the streets? Have you always been interested in kind of doing good, or has that kind of increased over time? Like for me, I was in the Cubs or whatever, and I did some volunteering for my Duke of Edinburgh's award, but I did it begrudgingly to get the badge. It's only really post the earthquakes here and then birth of child. It's like, okay, actually there's more to life than just trying to make as much money as possible. So yeah, what was the sort of arc of that for you, that kind of led
Yeah.
to led to B Corp ultimately?
Probably similar to you, Tim, actually, is that I dabbled in it and did bits and bobs that felt great and but nothing,
Mm,
consistent. And then I guess it's that I'll be honest, having your own business, there's an element of power, which is good. But then actually, it's like actually, this is something that could be, this power you can wield responsibly, right? And also for for a better society. And I'm not saying
mm,
that by being, a B Corp, we're going to change the world, but it's our own. It's having that control over what you do that you can do hopefully do good with it. And also, I think you mentioned about um, different measures of success, and I think it's so true that um, you know, uh, I would say the industry that I've been in a lot of the time, it's financial measures of success, and that's what you're held to. But it's like, well, what about all the other measures of success that are just as equally as important? And I think that's also really important for us, is to make sure that that is baked into the way that we work. So it's not, it's about your personal satisfaction. It's about the impact that you can have. It's about making sure that, yeah, what you are doing isn't going to be hopefully detrimental to society. So it's, yeah, just thinking about business and success in business in a different way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
love
so
it.
I would say that it's only at this point now with young children in the situation that we're in, you think, well, there's a lot you can't control, right,
Mm,
in terms of trying to help. But this is the way that you can.
yep. I don't know. So I recorded. So this is well, we're 10 to 10 in the evening, New Zealand time. I recorded another podcast this morning with Jay Cohen Gilbert, who was the co-founder of the B Corp movement. I still can't
Oh,
actually
wow.
believe that I managed to get him on the podcast. Um, and he had a really good turn of phrase, which I'm now going to not steal, I'm going to use and reference him because I'm referencing him. But he talks about how it's kind of like a, as he would say with his New York accent, the baton or the baton or the baton um, um, is kind of like handed down. And he said, for people like us, and we were sort of talking about this before we came on, we are like the sandwich generation where we've got parents
Mm,
that we're kind of increasingly responsible for as they age, but we've also got kids. And he sort of said that, whilst you're holding the baton, you only hold it briefly and then you will pass it to your kids.
mm,
And it's like, well, in
yeah.
in the relay race that is long-term human existence, are you running your bit of the race with integrity, with respect for the game? Are you looking after the baton so that when you hand it down to your kids, it's, they're well placed to go and take on the rest of, their part of the leg of the race. And I just thought that just kind of like really hit home the idea that, you're part of the legacy of the race that's maybe just ending, but you're in the middle of your race and you've got one eye on, am I going to hand over this baton in a, you know for an easy race for my kids. um
Yeah,
yeah,
I love that. That just made me feel, yeah,
it's
that
all
I
yours. You can
totally
go and
resonate that.
we can take it from New York to New Zealand to new
Thank you.
something new.
Cheltenham.
There we go, New Cheltenham. Yeah,
Love to hear. Yeah, yeah.
Cheltenham. I've been to
In the
Nam,
Nam. Yeah.
Cheltenham. And this is, yeah, the success thing. That he's a relatively famous guy over here called Nathan Wallace, and he is a like a neuroscience educator, and he does these talks on mainly aimed on sort of childhood development periods. And I think he has like 0 to 3, and then 3 to 7, then 7 to 14, then sort of teenagers, and he does all the research on how to basically be a less shit parent. Because let's face it, none of us know what we're doing. It's just about being less shit than we could have been. And in one of his talks, he kept referring to, if you do this, then, by the age of 18 to 21, your child is more likely to be more successful. And he kept talking about successful. And at the halftime break, he
Mm,
said, if anyone's got any questions, I'm just going to be mooching on the stage while, you all have like an intermission. And I sort of put my hand up and said, well, yeah, you keep talking about success, but what's your definition of success? And he said,
mm,
well, the only metrics that we can track from a scientific perspective in this field are level of education and level of income. And I
mm.
said, well, not being rude, but I have worked for some very highly qualified, highly paid sociopaths in my life, who would be what you would have just described as very successful. But I would not want my child to turn out like that.
Yeah.
What about purpose, meaning, contribution, contentment? And he's like, well, we can't
How do you
measure
measure
that.
that? Yeah,
And it's like, well,
that's the key.
isn't this the
Mm,
problem? But just because we can measure someone's got a PhD and they're earning half $1 million a year or £500,000 a year, but they're a complete asshole, so what? Yeah. So it's really interesting. And I think that's partly, broadly what this whole B Corp movement is about. It's, let's take take our eyes off the easy measure of success in business and
Mhm.
life, how many dollars I've got in the bank account, to let's try and help you measure some other bits and bobs. So
Yeah.
fun
Yeah,
times.
totally get that. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. I also did just sort of thinking back to the baton and the race and everything. I did a sustainability workshop with the University of Bath, not that sort of earlier this year, and
mm,
it also made me think that you are doing your bit of the race at this time, and that's what you're doing with your business. But there is the legacy effect of your business as well. So also thinking about you know beyond your own retirement, about the effect that your business can
mm,
have and continue to have even when you're not part of it. And that I hadn't really appreciated that. You know, you've got the baton running your business at this point, but actually you hope that even when you step back or retire or whatever it might be, your business continues. And that's
mm,
also a legacy effect of you as well, right?
mm.
So that's actually a really nice, if not sobering thought, you know.
Totally. And well, and even, even if no one takes over your business, if I guess for us both, as perhaps your business might have got more saleable value perhaps than a random B Corp consultancy. But even if you didn't, neither of us sold our businesses to someone else, you still had legacy, because you would
Yeah,
have worked for all these. There's all these
yeah,
like little I don't know, like breadcrumbs of stuff in the ether world,
of
or
impact.
of
Yeah,
impact
yeah,
that have been
absolutely.
left out
Yeah.
there. And that really is, that's the sort of the two cornerstones of purpose. What one is, contribution. So that idea of planting trees you're not going to see grow. I think I'm going to paraphrase it really badly. There's an American philosopher, sort of 1900s ish, William James. He said, the best use of life is to use it for something that outlasts it. It's like, sums it up really neatly. Like, don't be focused on what
Mm,
you're going to get out of it. What are other people going to get out of it, possibly for, I can't say the word forever instead of that other word, in perpetuity. There we go. I'll give it a go.
in
Um,
perpetuity. Yes.
there we go. That's the one.
See, I'm
Um,
in
nailed it.
communication, so I
Yes,
got to know my
yes.
words. Yeah.
Don't get your nerds waddled like I did. Um, yeah. So yeah, and I think yeah, as we do get a bit older, we get kids, you start thinking about all this stuff. So yeah, it's there's certainly a large number of our client base who are our age group with young kids, who suddenly go, maybe there's a bit more to life than just chasing the buckaroos. Um, cool. So yeah, so you certified not that long ago, really, in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
When
It
did
was
you get
end of
the
August.
end of August? Oh wow, so it's like
Yeah.
you're pretty fresh off the boat
So
of the
new.
B Corp,
Yeah. Yeah.
world. So what's been the reaction to the announcements, and any immediate results that have come from being B Corp certified yet?
Um, well, we had always talked about B Corp, and because we could say we were B Corp
Yep.
pending as well, it was, I think it was not necessarily a surprise to people that we got it, and we obviously got a great reaction to it, but it's just kind of part of the journey.
Yep.
So you know, I think one of the other things that we've found is that we've met a lot of people through doing B Corp and having been B Corp certified. And actually, that community is fantastic as well, because you feel like when you meet up with similar people like that, you feel like there's a collective
Mm.
of everybody doing the right thing. So I was at the Good Agencies Summit last week, and that's, you know, a lot of agencies there are B Corp certified, and you suddenly feel like you're part of this community, and it's wonderful to be part of. And um, we yeah, but it kind of felt like it was, we were hoping we were going to get the certification, obviously, but it just felt like it was the next natural step in the journey. Given that we'd started the assessment, or started getting questions back from our assessment like in January this year, so it's taken a long time. So whilst it was a relief when we got the certification, it wasn't a surprise, if that makes sense.
Nice. You've done your homework well. Um, yeah, I guess, yeah, the B Corp pending probably possibly does help, because like you say, you've got
Yeah,
that time to actually, you've got a year to get your ducks in a row. Whereas, yeah, if you're, yeah, typically we find other companies that we work with, it's like, okay, yeah, we've hit submit, we've maybe got 2 months now to do the homework, so possibly a bit more pressure and a bit more of a relief when they, oh my god, yes, we did it.
Yeah,
That's great to hear that the community, because obviously, we're more connected to the community over here in New Zealand. Yes, it's great to hear, and I think it's typically it does seem to be easy to kind of do business with a B Corps, because you've got that shared identity or shared sense of, okay, you've been through something tough that we've been through. Okay, yeah, we kind of know, we know what your vibe is, so you should be fitting into some parameters that we can understand as to how you see life and business, as opposed to, yeah, you're just another random company that we've never met before.
exactly.
Yeah,
Shared values. And I mean, I have to say, having gone on the journey myself, is that now I do, if I can, I preferentially buy, my own consumer choices. I look out for B Corp and I buy things from B Corp companies now, because I know then that's kind of the shared value between what I have and what they have. So, and it's
yeah,
similar in doing business, obviously, as well.
yeah.
So, when you think, oh, I need potentially a particular service. Oh, let's have a look to see
Let's
who's B Corp
try
certified.
the B Corp. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I've been, yeah, it was possibly about a year or so ago. I sort of had this moment of realization. It's like, man, this is so cool. I've just been to the supermarket and my bank is a B Corp. So I've used my B Corp bank credit card to buy some yogurt, some tea, some shampoo, and like there was like two other things. And it's like, man, this is so cool, because 2 years ago, I wouldn't have used this credit card and I wouldn't have bought 2/3 of these products that are a B Corp. It's like, that's just cool.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting every time I give a talk or I'm doing any kind of event, I sort of say to people, right, who's heard of B Corp? 3 years ago, there'd be maybe 2% of hands in the room going up. Now it's maybe 60 to 70% of hands going up. And I go, okay, right. So can anyone name a B Corp? Is there a B Corp product that you use? And people go, yeah, I use, this peanut butter, or yeah, I bank with these people, or I wear these clothes. It's like, cool. Like, this thing is, I mean, the UK is smashing it. Do you know what the number of UK B Corps is off the top of your head? It's like
I
well
was
over 1,000.
I was going to say I thought it was 1,500, but it might have
That,
that might be the pending. I don't know, but
right.
it's definitely over 1,000. They
Yeah.
hit a milestone recently. It might have been 1,000
I think it was
or
1,000 not
1,500.
that
I
long,
can't.
because yeah,
Yeah,
they had a massive. I think I'm right in saying that every B Corp, all 1,000 B Corps went to the party. I believe that is
I I want to
true.
say it was at the Natural History
Yes,
Museum,
something like that. Yeah, it's in
something
London,
like that.
and I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
London is the B Corp capital of the world, in terms of like per capita. Well, that's what I've heard recently. So yeah, there's definitely something in the water in Blighty. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, go UK. Um, I've just remembered the question I had from earlier on. So
All
backing up the
right. Yeah.
truck to medical writing, AI, medical writing, dissemination of
Ah.
information.
Yeah.
Discuss.
Discuss.
That's a
Oh my
60-minute
God.
podcast, because I mean it's interesting, because
Oh.
the whole ethos behind B Corp is a badge of trust and accountability. It's like, this company has done stuff and it's been proved, and we can, the veracity of those claims are tick. When the whole, I got introduced to Chat GTP GPT, the thingy, the AI bot, late last year. I saw something on it, maybe
Mm.
like October, November. I was kind of like, okay, yeah, sure, maybe flash in the pan. And then in the new year, it's just like everything is AI this, AI that. And for me, the word that sprung to my mind for 2023 was trust. Like, how do you know that the thing that you're reading is not written by a robot and it's just completely made up? So
Yeah.
yeah, how's that hit your industry, and how does that maybe link to B Corp and trust?
Yeah.
And
That's a really good question.
I'm glad I
And
remembered it now.
as you can imagine, there's a lot of talk about AI in med writing. It's, I mean, where do I start? At the moment, the tools are such that a lot of what ChatGPT throws up is inaccurate, is
Mm.
unverifiable, it makes up references or sources. So I think there are elements that at the moment you can use to help you in your job, but there's absolutely no way of trusting it. And there
Mm,
still has to be the human quality control. Of course, with the development and the speed of development of these things, who's to know in the future?
mm,
The other thing as well is that everything that you put into ChatGPT and everything it spits out is in the public domain. So you couldn't put in confidential pharma
mm,
data, for
right.
example. So then that throws up, there's that, and then there's also the aspects of having closed systems as well, which may um, affect our industry, i.e., they are not, they're not, you're not going to be um, disseminating any confidential data. Um, and yeah, I mean, we're obviously also seeing a lot around AI in medicine itself, and a lot of what and the way it's being positioned is that it's always going to aid
Mm,
diagnosis or aid patient management. It's always going to help the doctor, but ultimately the doctor's always going to have the final, the whatever. And so I'd like to think that that's the case in medical writing, is that sure, we're not going to lose our jobs to AI, but we could lose our job to somebody who knows how to use AI better
mm,
than you. So I think it's about keeping on top of the research and the industry. And actually, that is something that we are looking into in the Salve. We've got a little working group going on because there's lots of AI tools that help with literature searching,
mm.
um, using it for scientific purposes, medical purposes. So we've got a little sort of working group going on about looking into that, looking into how good these tools are. And yeah, watch this space on that front from us. But I think you just have to be on top of it in order to not get left behind. So yeah,
Mm,
it's I have seen some research recently where it, it 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 has been tested in medical writing and it's good, but it's not good enough,
right.
basically. But of course, at the moment, there's also headlines around AI can, ace the Harvard Medical School exam, entrance exam, and AI is better at empathy than doctors. And
Wow.
those are controversial headlines. You have to look
Mm,
behind the research a little bit more.
yeah.
Those are sort of more sort of
Have,
clickbait headlines if you go into it.
having
Yeah.
yeah, having spent 10 years working with orthopedic and neurosurgeons, I wouldn't be that shocked if AI was more empathetic than some surgeons. Um, but hey, although it will bring because there was the classic joke, what's the difference between God and an orthopedic surgeon? God doesn't think he's an orthopedic surgeon. But now you put AI at the top of that, who will become all seeing, omnipotent, omnipresent. So it'll now be, what's the difference between AI and an orthopedic surgeon? Orthopedic
Yeah.
surgeon. AI doesn't think it's an
I
orthopedic
think it's an
surgeon.
orthopedic surgery. Yeah, true, true. I like that. Yeah.
um, you kind of almost wonder, you know, is there going to be a place where actually your role and a human's role becomes more valuable? Because it's like, sure, you can get this done with chat gpt or AI and it's cheap because it's really quick, but actually if you want the handcrafted, handwritten, you might even get back to writing with like a fountain pen on vellum or something with a quill. It's like, this is actually someone's true thoughts. All their
Yeah.
knowledge has been, I don't know, it's going to be really interesting. Yeah, we've sort of toyed with a bit of chat gpt where we'll write for social media, we'll write a post and then we'll say, right, give us five different versions of this, but we've
Yeah.
put the original content is human, designed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a part of me that it's like, yeah, I think it's clearly a useful tool that can save a bunch of time, but it's like, it's your content. And I think particularly in the businesses that we're running, where they're small businesses where it's the human that they're connecting with. It's like, well, you don't want to diminish that human part of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
It yeah, it is. And I think you can spot it at the moment. You can
Mm,
anyway. I mean, we often get a lot of speculative inquiries around jobs or whatever it might be.
mm,
And I had one recently, the cover letter. It was tailored to us, which was great. But I thought, I smell ChatGPT here. It was honestly, you could just tell.
Yeah.
I don't know that, and I think that's the human element, isn't it? There's
Mm,
something that you're from a brain perspective that
mm,
is that's the level above AI, isn't it? It's like
mm.
actually you can tell that that was written by
You almost feel like you need to put spelling mistakes in stuff that you write to
exactly.
sort of prove that it was human.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
It is a crazy world. Yeah, it's. I mean, but I look back and I remember it would have been about 1998 when we were at Cardiff. I remember once for some reason being in the humanities library and someone had said, "There's this thing called email on the internet. Go to Hotmail. It's this thing," and I'm like, I don't I don't really understand. I mean, at the end of my first year, um, the head of history called me into the office and said, "Mr. Jones, you have to stop handwriting your essays. You have to use a computer." I was like, "No, that's part of my genius is because you can't quite read my handwriting. Therefore, you will have to subjectively give me slightly better marks because I might be right and you just can't understand my writing." So it's interesting that we're going through this, but I remember when Daisy, my daughter, was, I don't know, probably two, and she was sort of standing up in front of the TV screen and she was trying to swipe the TV screen because
Yeah,
she'd been using the
I had
iPhone.
that.
And you just
Yeah.
kind of go, okay, we're not in Kansas now, are we?
No. Oh my gosh. I
So
yeah. I remember like talking to my kids and saying, back in the day, you couldn't choose to
when
watch
I was
when you
little,
wanted.
yeah,
Yeah, you couldn't choose to watch what you wanted when you wanted it. You had to wait for it to
wait,
come on. You had
yeah,
four channels if you were
channel,
lucky,
yeah, and you
and
had to get off your ass and walk across the room and press the
yeah,
button.
and you could record one program and watch it later, but that
Yeah,
was it. And they're like, but I want to watch this now, and it's like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
can't you couldn't do that.
I was the remote. My dad would say, "Go and change the channel to channel 3." Yes, Dad. Maybe you had a stick if you were lucky. I remember at university we had a stick to change the channel because we were that lazy. It's best we don't go too far into university. It could be career limiting
Yeah,
for both of us. But yeah, it's insane how much the world has changed and just that rate of change. But yeah,
yeah.
anyway, so yeah, back to the B Corp track. So what does being a B Corp mean to you, and the team and the business in general?
Ah, it means it means so much because I feel like it's a real simple way of expressing our values and purpose as a company. So if you know what B Corp is, then you have an idea. So even without knowing what we do or what our vision and mission is, having that B Corp certification to me just very simply states um our or sets out our stall in terms of purpose as a company. Um and then it's it's really good for us from like a operational point of view because it's given us that framework, as I said, but it gives us that framework going forwards as well. So we've got the different pillars that we have to think about, especially as we are in a period of growth and scaling, and it's an opportunity to just to build on that and use that, knowing that it's going to um, help us when as we grow and scale, grow in the right direction. And somebody said to us recently, it's like grow better before you grow fast or something like that. And
Mm,
and that to us also really encapsulates how we want to do business. So it's about growing better, like grow good before you grow fast, and that's the best way in order to do it sustainably. And
nice.
sustainably meaning a lot of, in all sense of the word,
All
sustainably
senses. Yeah, yeah,
ill senses,
yeah.
environmentally and operationally, and from a staff perspective as well. So, yeah, and as I mentioned before, I feel like it's brought us into this community where I feel it's a lovely, positive, supportive community as well.
Mm,
Doesn't mean to say you can't obviously have that outside of B Corp. Of course you
totally.
can, but it's just that sort of stepping off point into,
Mm,
as we said, for all those other discussions. And um, And I'll be totally honest with you as well. We are a supplier to our clients, and they are increasingly asking for um, uh, environmental, societal considerations when we're, applying to or replying to RFPs or
Mm.
MSAs or whatever. And having B Corp means that, sure, it's not everybody's cup of tea, and there's other, aspects that, or other sort of certifications that ticks those boxes as well. It's not a tick box exercise, but it's, that you can say, look, this helps you understand us as a business,
Mm.
and it means it does save time for us in that business sense as well, that we can say, well, this is what we already have in place.
Nice. Yeah, we definitely are seeing that. The number of companies that we've had inquire and say, yeah, look, we're getting supply. A company yesterday, conversation with them, he's like, look, we're already kind of running to B Corp principles, but we need to put the ring on the finger. We're getting increasing pressure. They export from New Zealand into the UK and Europe. And they said, look, all the distributors that we're talking to, they want to know what our environmental creds are.
Mm,
And they were like,
mm.
so it's like literally this is mission critical that we get B Corp certified to the table stakes to keep the business that we've already got, let alone scale and get any more.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, it's a common refrain that we hear. Um, and yeah, I think most of the companies that are doing it aren't doing it for the tick box. It's like, okay, look, we've kind of already aligned to wanting to do good. This just gives us the framework, and it's going to cement these relationships. So,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
why wouldn't we?
absolutely. Yeah,
Um, I was
absolutely.
going to ask as well. So, have you noticed an increase in people reaching out for possible jobs since you've been B Corp certified, or is it again maybe a bit murky because you had the B Corp pending? Because typically that's a common thing that we see is people are going down, the B Corp directory and kind of going, okay, I want to work for a B Corp, so it's a clearly
Yeah,
identified group of organizations I can reach out to.
yeah. I wouldn't say there's been an increase. I'd say we get regular inquiries. Um, and I do feel that the purpose is coming through in, we do talk about it a lot on LinkedIn, and on articles on our website, and that kind of thing. So I do feel the we are communicating our purpose, because we also know that that's what people do want, that they want to
Mm.
have purpose in their jobs and their careers. So I don't think, having had the B Corp certification, while it's great, it hasn't necessarily um, led to an increase. But that's because I think we'd already been talking about it a lot,
Yep.
and we had the B Corp pending as well. So
Yep. Yeah, I think like I said, I think you're a special case in that regard because yeah, there's not that many that we've helped or been engaged with in any way who've had that pending before. So yeah,
mm,
but I think that
mm.
that's maybe just proof that you were baking in this good stuff from day one. So go you. Um, yeah. Um, so tension typically in like particularly with startup businesses, it's bootstrapping. We've got to take work. How have you been? And again, you've been doing this from like day one, so the B Corp's not really been like a Rubicon moment of before and after. But how have you balanced purpose and profit? And have you had any tough conversations where it's like, we kind of need the money to pay the mortgages next month, but we really don't want to work with this company. Like, have you had? I mean, I've had plenty of those moments. There's companies, back in the day, I've taken the money from that I preferred not to, but if I hadn't taken the money, I wouldn't be here today. And it's like I can rationalize that, and I'm cool with that.
Yeah, it's of course it's hard, and there's there's been one client that we've turned down because it wasn't in pharma, but it was in a sort of a scientific arena. It was in tobacco, and we were like, that just can't happen, even if you're trying to justify it as change from within and
Mm.
etc. Because that just wasn't going to align with our values. And then generally, the way we see it is that in order to do for example, the pro bono, the ESG, the not-for-profit stuff, we do have to have paying clients in order to do that. So it's you need to have a profitable business first in order to do that. So I mean, I think we've been very lucky in that since the start we have been in a position where we have been able to say yes to pro bono and ESG work. And also the model that we work on is quite flexible. So I do we haven't had to have a tricky conversation yet, but I do foresee that we will, because as we are taking on permanent staff, which we have done and we are doing, then that's, a little bit more of that flexibility um around resource, and then also committing to a percentage of pro bono and ESG work. That's, yeah, we're going to have to work that one out, and we haven't quite got the answer to that yet, but that's part of the journey. So yeah, I foresee potential challenges in that area, but we do know that we have to take on our clients in order to provide that additional, benefit that we want to provide.
Yeah, it's yeah. There's no solution. There's no great solution, which is why I like asking that question, just so that we can try and see what the common patterns are. But again, and apart from like obvious ones like tobacco, there are great cases for that change from within. Are they? Will we be an overwhelming force for positivity and good by exposing them to B Corp and how we operate and letting people have a little insight into how that works, versus if they just go off in their little bubble of not doing good and they don't get that exposure without. And I think it would be impossible to even collect the data around that, because it's so it'd be so hard. But for me, I always just, as we were sort of saying earlier on, you can't underestimate the impact that you might have of that one conversation that could lead to something. And so I always err on, it's probably better to expose people to this concept of B Corp, the business for good, because it is typically quite infectious. And once people see it, hey, this party is actually really good, the music's pretty cool, the beer's tasting pretty nice. Yeah, actually, how do we start this party? Can we have the drinks list and the party guide and the party hats, please, for next time? So yeah. So what's the sort of the future? So you touched on supply chain being one area that you're kind of looking at. Any other areas that you're going to be looking at for your recertification? Because obviously you've got 3 years, but the clock is ticking. What does that look like? What's the next big piece?
So of course we're also waiting to see what the changes are for the.
There is that.
So while we'll be just about to publish our second impact report and have our sort of improvement goals in there, we are very conscious of the fact that very soon the certification is going to change, right? So I think we've got one eye on that. Also, like you say, given that when we submitted, we didn't get assessed on employees, but now we will next time. So that's a big piece of work for us. Like you say, I think we're well set up for it, but that's a whole other aspect that we need to go into and start doing now. Basically, we've got all the processes in place for the other areas that we were assessed on, and that monitoring of that and recording and tracking. That's great, but I think for us the focus will be on the employee section. There's also a piece of work that around impact and measuring impact with what we do, and it's kind of tricky because ultimately it's we're hoping that the work we do leads to better patient management, better quality of life for patients, but we're sort of 2 steps removed from that. So measuring impact, that's another challenge for us, and one that we need to sort of look into how we do that in a systematic way. And supply chain and like that we attended a women's enterprise meeting, We Connect, back in July, and that was about connecting big companies like huge multinationals with the smaller women-owned businesses, and we learned a lot from that in terms of onboarding suppliers, like what they do, and we can take that and use that. And that came up in our B impact assessment, actually. It's like, what do we do to help suppliers of minority owned businesses to on board with us or to have an equal, seat at the table. And that was something we hadn't considered. So that's again something else that we can look into in terms of ensuring our supply chain is, continues to be diversified as well, is like helping suppliers come on board with us. So yeah, there's I mean
Plenty to get on
there's
with.
loads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, you mentioned like the outcome stuff. So that's an area that I've not been strong on in the business. But I'll when the time's right, I'll connect you. So I've just been working. He's a mate of mine, but he's asked me not to publicize who he is and what he's doing yet because he's just getting his ducks in a row to sort of launch
Oh,
his
cool.
business. But literally, I've spent, other than doing the podcast this morning, I've spent an entire day today workshopping on confirming our theory of change and the outcome measurement and all that stuff. So if you want, I'll make a quiet intro for you because that's his jam, and he's been doing it for a couple of years now for other people, but he's going out on his own, and it's really interesting. I was just saying to him today, the vast majority of companies that we have in our ecosystem on B Corp, it's kind of like let's just get you in, let's just get B Corp, and most of them maybe don't have an impact. Well, if they have an impact business model, it's kind of like they've tripped over it rather than actually the business was set up to make this impact. It's like, okay, well, you are doing something above and beyond, but it's almost unintentional to a degree, or it's not the core focus of the business. And I think there's a lot of companies that are wanting to start thinking about that and go, well, actually, we are a business that's doing good in terms of how we operate and how we treat our staff and the rest of it. But actually, is the work that we're doing actually making waves? And so, yeah, it was been a really cool experience to go through that today. And yeah, pretty much the work we have been doing seems to be on track with outcomes that we think we're getting. So the next thing we're going to be doing is some stakeholder engagement and actually going out to our previous clients and other people to sort of say, and this is going to be the fun thing because this podcast is now part of our theory of change. And so we're going to do spoiler alert, although the post will probably come out before this episode airs. We're actually going to do like a LinkedIn post to say, did you know we're possibly the only podcast in the world that has a theory of change?
That's awesome. Love it.
Because the theory behind it is, we are educating and inspiring people to look at B Corp. And so we're going to run. The idea is we're going to run a LinkedIn poll to say, have you listened? If you've listened to our podcast, has it inspired you to think about B Corp or start thinking about business for good in any way, shape, or form? And if we can collect that data, then we can say outcome measurement is our podcast has influenced people to think about more, sustainability or impact in their day-to-day business. So watch this space. We hope to be the world's, I don't know, unless someone else has got one, let me know. But I feel pretty positive we'll be the world's first podcast with the theory of change.
That's awesome. Love it. Love it. Yeah. I mean, we as as a business, we understand, like evidence behind behavior change and different models that we can use, but it's just that that time and implementation to apply it. And yeah, but it would be great if you could connect me because I'd love to talk to your friend.
We will do that. He's like I say, he's got some clients in the UK he's working with, so I will make a note of that because he's got a really simple process that makes it demystifies what is quite when you look at it you kind of go I don't really know where to start. But yeah, no, so he was very good. Awesome. So yeah, what else is on the cards? What's you're going to be an even better B Corp in a few years, but yeah, and you're going to have a bunch of employees. It just sounds like you're smashing it. Obviously. Liz the Biz,
so,
as you were known in uni. Liz the Biz is doing the biz.
Yeah, oh my God, I haven't heard that for years. Yeah.
It's come full circle.
Well, yeah. Well, hopefully next year I might get to see you at that reunion, that Cardiff University reunion.
Yeah, watch this space.
Yeah, and I can sort of update you on everything then. But yeah, just doing what we do well, and bringing everybody along with us on the ride, and wanting to have some purpose with what they do. So nothing, that we have got some research things that we're doing and hoping will be accepted and we'll be able to present them sort of upcoming at sort of industry meetings and things. So I not that precious, but I guess technically the data are embargoed, so I can't talk
Right.
to you
Ooh,
about it.
top secret.
Yeah, well, it's just the way the industry
Yeah,
works,
that's fair enough. Yeah.
and yeah, so just that I was on a panel discussion last week, as I said, at the Good Agencies Summit. So just doing those kinds of things and talking about it, like
Mm,
talking about purpose in that respect in relation to our business is, yeah, we shall continue doing that. And
nice.
it's great.
Banging that drum. That's what it needs. Awesome. Well, it has been great. We were just saying before we started that the last time we saw each other in person was what, like 18 years ago? When 18, 19 years ago, you came out to New Zealand, I was living in Auckland, and we went out to
Yes.
Rangitoto Island and we walked up a volcano. So
Yes.
hopefully we won't leave it another 18 years. That Cardiff reunion sounds quite dangerous, but I am quite intrigued to see if I can make that happen. I think that could be, yeah, I think we could pull together quite an interesting group of humans to come back to that. I don't think Cardiff would be
just
ready for
just don't wear blue shirt and chinos,
no
right?
blue shirts and chinos. Yeah. But no, it's been really good to reconnect, sort of through this B Corp journey, and yeah, love what you're doing. Like everyone else that we're hanging out with, you're just cool people doing cool stuff in a really cool way, and you're doing good business, and you're going to do even more good business. So go you.
Thanks, Tim. It's been great. Love chatting to you this morning. And like you say, it's been so nice, use not using this as an excuse to get together again, but it's just like, it's really cool to be in touch and catching up on the old days.
Yeah, but I don't think the 1996 to 1999 Tim and Liz would ever have imagined we'd be on a podcast about business for good. It's quite
Just
frightening when
think,
you sort
it is. Just think in another 25 years when we're,
when
God knows how
we're all
old.
living on
Yeah.
Mars in our rest
Oh,
homes in Mars. That's my
yeah.
theory. Yeah, when Elon's cracked it and we're all living on some other planet. Who knows? Well, no, we won't leave it that long. That's for sure.
No, definitely not. No.
Cool.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks, mate. We'll catch you soon.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Hey, it's Tim here, that B Corp bloke from Grow Good. If you want more content on purpose, B Corp, how to do more good in the world as an individual or a business, then you know the drill. Hit the like and subscribe. Check out some of our other videos. They're probably floating around here somewhere. You know how it works. Thank you so much. See you next time.